Doctor gave him 48 hours to save his mother's life. No money, no options. Then a stranger made an offer he couldn't refuse. His mother survived, but the bill didn't stop coming. Stay until the end, because the real cost is terrifying. Subscribe to this channel if you're just joining. Eli Carter was 22 years old, but life had already taught him how to move like someone much older. He woke before his alarm, not because he was disciplined, but because his mind never fully shut down. Sleep came in fragments, short, shallow pieces interrupted by thoughts he didn't invite and couldn't silence. By the time morning arrived, he was already tired. He moved quietly through the small room he shared with his mother, not tiptoeing, just careful. Careful not to wake her. Careful not to disturb the fragile peace they lived inside. He washed his face with cold water, stared at his reflection, and took a breath before the day claimed him. Engineering lectures filled his mornings, long rooms, whiteboards crowded with formulas, professors talking about systems, pressure, failure points. Eli understood those concepts better than most. He listened without speaking, took notes without show, solved problems while others argued over methods. He was smart. But being smart didn't pay tuition. So when classes ended, Eli didn't linker like the others. He fixed broken phones for small cash, rewired appliances, helped classmates with projects they didn't fully understand. At night, he cleaned floors at a gym built for people who never worried about money. By the time the city slept, Eli was still moving. Not chasing dreams, covering costs. Silence followed him everywhere. Not the peaceful kind, the heavy kind. The kind that pressed against his chest while he worked, while he walked, while he sat alone on buses at night, staring through windows that reflected a man too tired to look back. He wasn't shy. He was thinking. Thinking about tuition deadlines, about rent creeping closer, about groceries that stretched thinner every week, about how long his body could keep this pace before it started breaking down, and always about his mother. Grace Carter was the reason Eli carried himself the way he did. She had spent years standing over heat and smoke, selling food from early morning until her feet swelled and her back burned. She never complained, never dramatized her sacrifices. She simply did what needed to be done so her son could sit in classrooms she never had the chance to enter. She didn't understand engineering, but she believed in it. She believed in him. Even as illness began to bend her posture and slow her steps, her faith never wavered. She watched him leave every morning with tired eyes and whispered prayers he pretended not to hear. Every morning, without fail, she asked the same question. "Have you eaten?" Eli always smiled when he answered, "Yes, Mama." Even when his breakfast had been a glass of water, even when his stomach ached quietly during lectures, even when hunger became just another thing he learned to ignore. Because some truths feel too heavy to hand back to the people who already gave you everything. Grace never pushed. She trusted him the way only a mother can, completely and without proof. And that trust sat heavier on Eli's shoulders than any bag he carried. At night, when the world finally slowed, Eli lay awake listening to her breathing from the other room. Each inhale, each exhale became a silent promise to himself. I will not fail you. I will figure this out, no matter the cost. He didn't know yet how much that promise would demand, but the weight was already there, settling in, quiet, unspoken, waiting. Grace collapsed on an ordinary morning. There was no warning, no dramatic build. One moment she was standing in the kitchen asking Eli if he'd remembered his jacket. The next, her knees buckled like her body had simply decided it was done holding itself upright. The sound of her hitting the floor was soft, but the silence afterward was not. Eli shouted her name once, then again, louder. His voice shook as he dropped beside her, hands hovering uselessly over a body that suddenly felt unfamiliar. Her eyes fluttered. Her lips tried to form words that didn't come. By the time the ambulance arrived, Eli was already running on instinct, answering questions, signing forms, nodding even when he didn't fully hear what was being said. Hospital corridors swallowed them whole. Lights, doors, voices overlapping, a stretcher disappearing through a doorway he wasn't allowed to cross. Then alarms. Sharp, mechanical, unforgiving. Grace's voice vanished beneath them. Eli stood against a wall that smelled like disinfectant and fear, staring at nothing while everything inside him screamed. His hands shook. His chest felt too tight for air to move properly. Minutes stretched into something longer, something heavier. When the doctor finally appeared, he didn't rush. That was what terrified Eli the most. Dr. Samuel Okoye spoke with the calm of someone who had said these words many times before. "She survived the episode, but her condition is unstable," he said. Eli nodded quickly, desperate. Okay, what do we do?" The doctor adjusted his glasses, eyes steady but not unkind. "She needs surgery," he said. "Soon." Eli didn't hesitate. "When?" Dr. Okoye paused, just long enough for dread to settle. "There's a deposit," he said. "We need it before we proceed." Eli swallowed. "How much?" The number landed in his chest like a physical blow. He didn't repeat it out loud. He couldn't. "I'll get it," Eli said immediately, too quickly. "Please, I just need time." Dr. Okoye studied him for a moment, then sighed, not impatient, but tired. "You have 48 hours, he said. "After that, we'll have no choice but to discharge her." Discharge. The word echoed long after the doctor walked away. Eli returned to Grace's room slowly, like he was afraid moving too fast might make the truth worse. She was awake now, pale, smaller somehow. Her eyes found him instantly. "What did the doctor say?" she asked softly. Eli took her hand. It felt colder than usual. "You'll be fine," Eli said, smiling the way he always did. "They just need to run some tests." Grace watched his face carefully. She always had. "You look worried," she said. "I'm just tired," Eli replied. She nodded, trusting him without question. That trust nearly broke him. That night, while Grace slept, Eli stepped into the corridor and started calling everyone whose number still lived in his phone. Family first. "I'm sorry," his uncle said. "Things are tight." An old family friend sighed. "I wish I could help, maybe next month." A classmate who once borrowed money from Eli laughed awkwardly. "My brother, I'm broke." One call ended, then another. Each one chipped something away. By midnight, Eli slid down the wall and sat on the cold floor, phone loose in his hand. He checked his bank balance, even though he already knew. It wasn't close, not even remotely. The next morning, he sold his laptop. The shop owner barely looked at him. "That's the best I can do," the man said, sliding cash across the counter like it was nothing. It wasn't enough. Eli sold his phone next, borrowed an old one from a security guard who didn't ask questions. Still not enough. He didn't go home. He slept on a bench near the ward, afraid that if he left, even for an hour, something would happen while he was gone. A nurse stopped beside him once. "You should rest," she said gently. "I'm okay," Eli replied. He wasn't. By the following afternoon, Grace's condition worsened. Dr. Okoye pulled Eli aside again. "Time is running out," he said. "I know," Eli replied. His voice sounded older now, thinner. "Trying isn't enough," Dr. Okoye said quietly. "Money is what we need." Eli nodded. He didn't argue. He didn't beg. He just nodded. That evening, as the sun sank behind the hospital buildings, Eli stepped outside and stood near the gate. Cars passed. People laughed. Life continued like nothing was wrong. Eli stared at the sky and whispered words he didn't know anyone could hear. "I'll do anything," he said. "Just let her live." He didn't know yet that someone had heard him.
Back inside, he sat beside Grace again, holding her hand while machines hummed softly. When she stirred, she smiled faintly. "You're here," she said. "Always," Eli replied. He meant it, even if it cost him more than he understood. That night, as the countdown continued, Eli made a promise he hadn't fully measured yet. And somewhere, in the quiet, that promise began to change everything.
The island gym was quiet in the way only rich places are after midnight. Not peaceful, just empty. The machines stood in neat rows, polished and unused. Mirrors reflected fluorescent lights and Eli's lone figure moving slowly across the floor. Music played softly from ceiling speakers, the kind meant to motivate people who had already gone home. Eli pushed the mop forward, then back. Again and again. His body was running on habit now, not strength. His arms ached, his back burned, but he didn't slow down. Because slowing down meant thinking, and thinking meant remembering the clock. He cleaned places no one would ever inspect, corners, baseboards, under benches that belonged to people who would never know his name. He worked the way he always did, thorough, quiet, invisible. That was when he felt it. Not a sound, a presence. Eli straightened slightly and glanced at the mirror ahead of him. Someone was standing behind him. A woman. Not dressed for the gym, no towel, no headphones, just standing near the weights section, hands relaxed at her sides, watching him work like she was observing a process. Eli looked away immediately and kept mopping. He'd learned long ago not to invite attention. Minutes passed. The mop slid across the floor. The bucket squeaked softly. His shoes left damp prints that faded behind him. Still, she didn't move. "You work like someone with a problem." The voice was calm, controlled, not curious. Eli turned. She was closer now, tall, well-dressed without being flashy, hair pulled back neatly. Her eyes were sharp, not cruel, not kind, assessing. "My name is Vivian Locke," she said. "I come here late. I notice things." Eli nodded once. "Yes, Ma." She studied his face like she was reading something written between the lines. "You're young," she continued, "but your eyes are tired. That usually means pressure." Eli swallowed. "My mother is sick," he said suddenly. The words surprised even him. Vivian didn't react like people usually did. No pity, no gasp, no apology. She knew, she said simply. Eli looked up sharply. "How?" She gestured vaguely. "You smell like hospitals and fear. Both linger." She reached into her handbag and pulled out a thick, brown envelope. Sealed. No writing on the front. She held it out. "This may solve your problem." Eli stared at it. His first instinct was refusal. His second was suspicion. His third, strongest, was hope. "What is it?" he asked. Vivian met his eyes directly. "That depends on whether you open it." His heart began to pound. "There's no free money," Eli said quietly. Vivian's lips curved into something that wasn't quite a smile. "No," she agreed, "there isn't." She placed the envelope into his hands anyway. It was heavier than paper should be. Not just weight, presence. "You must open it alone," she said. "That part matters." Eli tightened his grip. "Why me?" he asked. Vivian paused. For the first time, she didn't answer immediately. "Because you work when no one is watching," she said finally, "and because desperate men don't pretend they aren't desperate." She stepped back. "Decide quickly," she added. "Time is something you don't have." Then she turned and walked away. Her heels echoed briefly against the floor.
Then she was gone. The gym returned to its quiet hum. Eli stood frozen, the mop forgotten, the envelope pressed against his chest. Somewhere far away, a machine beeped in his memory. He didn't open it. Not that night. He finished his shift in silence, moving slower now, like every step carried consequence. When he changed his clothes, he folded his uniform carefully. When he left the gym, the night air felt heavier than before. At the bus ride back to the hospital, Eli went straight to his mother's room. Grace was asleep, breathing, still here. Eli stood there for a long time, watching her chest rise and fall. "I still have time," he whispered. He sat on the corridor bench and placed the envelope on his lap. His fingers trembled. "Not yet," he told himself. "Not here." He slipped it back into his bag and leaned his head against the wall. Sleep came in fragments. Fear filled the spaces between. And inside the envelope, unopened, waiting, was a solution that didn't care what it would cost him. Only that he would pay.
Eli didn't open the envelope right away. He carried it like it could speak if he listened too closely. From the gym to the bus stop to the long ride back toward the hospital, his hand never left his bag. Every bump in the road made his heart jump. Every passing streetlight reminded him that time was still moving, whether he was ready or not. At the hospital, the lights were dimmer than usual. Night staff moved quietly. Machines hummed in steady, indifferent rhythms. Grace was asleep when he checked on her. Her breathing was shallow but even. For a moment, Eli allowed himself to believe that meant everything would be okay. He sat on the hard plastic bench outside her ward and finally pulled the envelope out. It was thick. He turned it over once, then twice. "Just look," he whispered to himself. "Just look." Inside was a folded hospital receipt. His breath caught. Paid in full. The exact amount Dr. Okoye had said. Not rounded, not estimated. Exact. Eli's hands began to shake. For a brief, reckless second, relief flooded him so fast it felt like joy. His mother would live. She would get the surgery. She would wake up and smile again and ask him if he had eaten. Then another thought followed, quieter, but sharper. At what cost? Eli folded the papers carefully and put them back into the envelope. He didn't sleep that night. Morning came too quickly. Grace woke, coughing, pain written across her face. Nurses moved faster. Dr. Okoye's eyes were serious when he looked at Eli. "You have until this evening," the doctor said. "After that, we discharge." Eli nodded. No arguments left. By evening, rain had begun to fall, heavy, steady, the kind that washed the city clean and hid everything else. Eli sat alone in the small public restroom near the hospital. The flickering light buzzed overhead. He took out the envelope one last time and stared at the signature line. "This is just one night," he told himself. "One night for a lifetime." His pen hovered. Then he thought of Grace's hand in his, the way she trusted him without question, the way she believed he would always find a way. His hand stopped shaking. He signed. The rain soaked him as he stepped outside. Across the road, a black car waited. The door opened. Eli took one deep breath, then another, and stepped inside. The city blurred past the windows as the car moved. Rain traced lines down the glass like something was melting. Eli sat rigid, hands on his knees, feeling strangely disconnected from his own body. Mrs. Vivian Locke sat in front. She didn't turn around. "You signed," she said. "Yes," Eli replied. "Good. We don't revisit decisions." The car stopped at a tall, silent building. Inside, everything was clean, quiet, controlled.
like nothing had ever gone wrong here. Eli was shown a room, white walls, large bed, curtains drawn tight. "This isn't romance," Mrs. Locke said, later standing in the doorway. "Don't pretend it is." "I know," Eli replied. When the door closed, he stood alone listening to his own breathing. "This is real," he whispered. The night passed, though the story didn't follow him through it. Instead, it followed the rain outside, the ticking of a distant clock, the steady beep of a hospital monitor miles away. Morning came without ceremony. Mrs. Locke stood by the window, already dressed. "You may leave," she said. Nothing else. At the hospital, Eli ran. Grace was awake. Color had returned to her face. "The doctor said something good happened," she said softly. Dr. Okoye confirmed it moments later. "The deposit was paid. Surgery is scheduled." Eli's knees nearly gave out. He held the bed rail and nodded, tears burning his eyes. Grace smiled. "God answered us," she said. Eli smiled back. "Yes, Mama, God answered us." But even as relief washed over him, something else settled deep in his chest. The money had saved his mother, but the cost hadn't finished collecting yet. And Eli understood, too late, that the choice he made that night didn't end with a signature. It had only begun.
Eli thought relief would feel lighter. Instead, it felt heavy, like something had settled into his chest and decided to stay. Grace's surgery went well. The doctors said she was stable. Color returned to her face slowly, day by day, like life was remembering her again. Nurses smiled when they passed her bed. Dr. Okoye nodded with approval. "She's strong," he said. "She'll recover." Eli thanked him, bowed his head, and stepped into the hallway. That was when his phone vibrated. Unknown number. A single message. "Do not forget our agreement." Eli stared at the screen. The words didn't shout. They didn't threaten. They didn't explain. They didn't need to. His chest tightened. His fingers went numb. Another message followed seconds later. "You are to be available when I call." Eli leaned against the wall and closed his eyes. The hospital suddenly felt too bright, too loud, too alive. The money had done what it was supposed to do. Grace was alive. That was the deal. But the silence after the deal was worse than the fear before it. That night, Eli stayed beside his mother's bed. He helped her sip water, adjusted her pillow, smiled when she smiled. "You look tired," Grace said softly. "I'm fine," Eli replied. She studied him for a long moment, then nodded. She had always trusted him. That trust felt heavier now than any debt. When Grace fell asleep, Eli stepped outside. The city lights flickered like nothing had changed. His phone buzzed again. "Tomorrow evening, be ready." No address, no explanation, just instruction. Eli typed slowly. "Okay." The reply came instantly. "Good." That was all. The next day, Eli went to class for the first time in a week. He sat at the back of the lecture hall, notebook open, pen in hand. The lecturer spoke. Equations filled the board. Eli understood none of it. His mind wasn't in the room. It was waiting, counting time between vibrations, anticipating commands. His friend Marcus leaned over. "Where have you been?" Marcus whispered. "Everyone's been asking." "My mother was sick," Eli replied. "Is she okay?" "Yes." Marcus studied him. "You don't look okay." "I'm just tired." Marcus frowned. "You don't get tired like this." The lecture ended. Students packed their bags. Eli stood slowly, like standing too fast might make something collapse. Outside, Marcus stopped him. "You're acting like someone's watching you," he said. Eli forced a smile. "You're imagining things." But Marcus didn't smile back. "Be careful,"
he said quietly. Help that comes without questions always collects interest. That evening, a black car waited near Eli's apartment. The door opened. No driver spoke. The ride was silent. Mrs. Vivian Locke sat across from him this time. Perfect posture, calm expression, eyes that missed nothing. "You look relieved," she said. "My mother survived." "Yes, that means my investment worked." Investment. The word landed wrong. "You'll continue your studies. I don't want complications." "Yes," Eli replied. "You'll come when I call." "Yes." "You won't discuss this with anyone." "Yes." She leaned forward slightly. "This is not kindness. Don't mistake it for that." Eli met her gaze. "Then what is it?" Mrs. Locke smiled faintly. "Ownership." The words settled between them like a closed door. That night, Eli slept in a guest room again, alone, fully dressed, staring at the ceiling. He felt like something had shifted, not around him, inside him. Days passed. Mrs. Locke called when she wanted. Sometimes she summoned him just to remind him she could. Sometimes she canceled at the last minute and said nothing. "You should be grateful. Some people beg for this life." "This isn't my life," Eli replied quietly. "It is now." At school, his grades slipped. He missed deadlines. His focus fractured. At the hospital, Grace grew stronger. And with every step she took toward recovery, Eli felt himself stepping further away from himself. One evening, his phone buzzed while he was helping his mother eat. Unknown number. "Come now." Eli stared at the screen. Grace noticed his pause. "Is something wrong?" she asked. "No, just school," Eli said quickly. "You work too hard." She smiled. "You work too hard." Eli nodded. That night, sitting alone in the car again, he finally understood the truth he had been avoiding. The money had saved his mother's body, but the contract had claimed something else. His time, his choices, his silence. And the worst part? There had been no end date. As the city lights passed by, Eli rested his head against the window. He had made the choice thinking it would end the pain. Instead, it had changed its shape. And deep down, Eli knew if he didn't find a way out soon, this debt wouldn't just control his life. It would become it.
Control doesn't announce itself. It settles in quietly, until one day you realize you're asking permission to breathe. Eli felt it most in the waiting. Waiting for the phone to vibrate, waiting for instructions, waiting for the moment his life stopped belonging to him again. Mrs. Vivian Locke didn't need to threaten him anymore. She didn't raise her voice. She didn't repeat herself. Her certainty did the work. "You'll come when I call." And he did. Not because he wanted to, but because defiance felt dangerous when gratitude had been weaponized. One afternoon, Eli sat in the engineering lab long after everyone else had left. Machines hummed softly. Blueprints lay open on the table. This was the space where his mind used to feel sharp, alive. Now it felt distant. His phone buzzed. "Tonight, be ready." No explanation. Eli stared at the screen longer than usual. For the first time, he didn't reply immediately. He remembered something Marcus had said days earlier. "Help that comes without questions always collects interest." That sentence had stayed with him like a splinter. Eli looked around the empty lab. For the first time since the hospital, he asked himself a question he'd been avoiding. How does this end? The answer was immediate and terrifying. It doesn't. That night, instead of getting into the waiting car, Eli walked. He walked past the curb, past the streetlights, past the invisible boundary he'd built in his own head. His phone buzzed again. "Where are you?" He didn't answer. He kept walking. His chest felt tight, not with fear, but with something else. Resolve. At a quiet cafe near campus, Eli sat across from a man Marcus had insisted he meet weeks ago. Eli hadn't understood why then. Now he did. Professor Daniel Hargreaves listened without interrupting. No judgment, no shock, just attention. When Eli finished, the professor leaned back slightly. "You're describing coercion," he said calmly. Eli laughed once, bitterly. "I signed. I agreed." "You agreed under duress," Hargreaves replied. "That matters." Eli shook his head. "She paid for my mother's surgery. And now she's using that to own you. That also matters." Silence stretched between them. "What do I do?" Eli asked. Hargreaves didn't answer right away. Instead, he asked, "Do you want to live like this?" Eli swallowed. "No." "Then you need leverage, not anger, not guilt. Leverage." "How?" "You stop being predictable, and you document everything." Eli's phone buzzed again. "This is not a request." Hargreaves glanced at the screen. "She's used to obedience. The moment that changes, her control weakens." Eli hesitated. "What if she retaliates?" Hargreaves met his eyes. "People who rely on silence fear exposure more than defiance." That night, Eli went home instead of answering the call. For the first time, Mrs. Locke showed irritation. Her messages came faster, sharper. "You are forgetting yourself. Do not confuse patience with permission." Eli didn't respond. The next morning, his phone rang. Her voice was calm, but thinner now. "You didn't come." Eli replied. "I was unavailable." A pause. "That's not how this works." "It is now," Eli said quietly. Another pause, longer this time. "You owe me." Eli took a breath. His hands were shaking, but his voice didn't. "I paid, in full. What came after was never agreed to." "You're being influenced," she said. "Yes," Eli replied, "by clarity." Her breath sharpened. "You think someone can protect you?" "No," Eli said. "I think I can." Silence. Then softly, "You're making a mistake." "Maybe," Eli replied, "but it will be mine." The call ended. Eli sat on his bed, heart racing. He expected fear. What he felt instead was something unfamiliar. Space. Over the next week, Eli changed his patterns. He stopped answering immediately, stopped arriving on command, stopped explaining himself. He documented every message, every instruction, every threat disguised as concern. Mrs. Locke noticed. Her control tightened and cracked. "You're becoming difficult," she said during one encounter. "I'm becoming unavailable," Eli corrected. She studied him differently now. Less ownership, more calculation. And under that, uncertainty. That night, Eli visited his mother. Grace was sitting up, stronger now, folding laundry slowly. "You look lighter," she said. Eli smiled faintly. "I feel like I can breathe again." She looked at him carefully. "Did someone hurt you?" Eli hesitated, then shook his head. "Not anymore." "Good," she nodded. "Never let anyone convince you that saving someone means losing yourself." Those words sealed it. As Eli walked home, his phone buzzed one last time that night. "We need to talk." Eli looked at the message, then locked his phone. For the first time since the envelope, he wasn't afraid of the next call. Because the cage wasn't gone yet, but it had cracked. And now, Mrs. Vivian Locke wasn't the only one with power anymore. The last meeting was inevitable. Control never lets go quietly. It demands a final word. Eli knew that the moment the message arrived. Come tonight. We will settle this. No command this time. No threat, which made it more dangerous. He didn't answer immediately. He packed his phone charger, his documents, and the printed copies of every message, every instruction, every demand that had followed the night of the envelope. Not as a shield, as proof. When the car arrived, Eli walked into it by choice, not obedience. The city blurred past the windows, lights stretching into long lines like time itself pulling forward. Mrs. Vivian Locke's house was silent when he arrived. Too silent. She was waiting in the living room, standing, not seated. Power move. She wore dark clothing, precise and sharp, like she was attending a negotiation instead of a reckoning. "You've changed," she said. "So have the terms," Eli replied. She smiled thinly. "You never understood the terms." "I understand them now. That's the problem," Eli said. She gestured to the chair. "Sit." Eli remained standing. For the first time, she looked irritated. "You think this ends because you decided it does?" she asked. "I paid when no one else would. I solved your crisis." "I paid a hospital," Eli said evenly. "Doctors saved my mother. I paid you back." She stepped closer. "With one night." "With one agreement," Eli replied, "which you broke." Her smile vanished. "You're ungrateful," she snapped. "You were desperate, invisible. No one saw you until I did." Eli felt the words hit, but they didn't cut the way they used to. "You didn't see me," he said quietly. "You saw leverage." Silence fell between them. She circled him slowly, like she was measuring whether intimidation still worked. "You think you can walk away clean?" she said. "Do you know what I can do to your future?" Eli nodded. "Yes." She raised an eyebrow. "Then why are you still standing there?" "Because I'm not alone anymore," he replied. That stopped her. He placed the folder on the table. Printed messages, screenshots, dates, times. Every boundary crossed. "You should have kept this simple," she said. "I tried. You didn't." She laughed sharply. "You won't use this. You're not that kind of man." "No," Eli said. "I'm the kind who learned." Her voice dropped. "You think exposure scares me?" "It doesn't have to," Eli said. "It just has to inconvenience you." For the first time, uncertainty flickered across her face. "You're bluffing," she said. "Test it," Eli replied calmly. She stared at him, longer than before. "You owe me," she said again, quieter now. Eli shook his head. "No," Eli said. "I survived you. That's different." She stepped back, reassessing him like a broken equation. "You were nothing when I found you," she said bitterly. Eli met her gaze. "And yet," he said, "here I am, still standing, without you." That was the moment she knew. The leverage was gone. She turned away first. "You may leave," she said coldly, "but do not mistake this for mercy." Eli picked up the folder. "I won't," Eli replied. "I'll remember it as release." He walked out without waiting for permission. The gate closed behind him with a final heavy sound. Outside, the night felt different, not lighter, clearer. Eli walked instead of waiting for the car. Every step felt like reclaiming something he didn't know he'd lost. His phone buzzed once. Unknown number. He didn't open it. He blocked it. At the hospital, Grace was awake when he arrived. She looked at him and smiled. "You look like someone who put something down," she said. Eli sat beside her bed and took her hand. "I did," Eli replied. She squeezed his fingers gently. "Good. Never carry what wasn't meant for you." That night, Eli slept. Not in fragments, not on a bench, not waiting for instructions. He slept fully. The next morning, he walked into Professor Hargreaves' office. "It's done," Eli said.
Hargreaves studied his face and nodded. "You chose yourself." "Yes," Eli replied. "Finally." Over the next weeks, life didn't explode into success. It stabilized. Classes regained focus, work regained meaning, silence stopped feeling dangerous. Mrs. Locke didn't call again, not because she couldn't, because she knew. The power dynamic had reversed. Months later, Eli stood outside an engineering firm, letter in hand. An internship. Real work, real pay, no hidden cost. As he stepped inside, he felt something unfamiliar settle in his chest. Not victory, ownership. Of his life, of his choices, of his future. Some debts save lives, others try to own them. Eli had paid both, but only one had lasted. And this time, the door didn't close behind him. It opened.